Professor Wergele's here. Let's talk about why we want to use jQuery. Now, there are a lot of other JavaScript frameworks out there, but jQuery seems to be the most popular and also the most extendable. Now, a lot of people are using Bootstrap. Bootstrap is built on top of jQuery, and a lot of other popular frameworks are as well. jQuery is the backbone for most of the popular frameworks used today, and thus is why I want to talk about it in this class. In addition, many of the biggest companies around the world for the web use jQuery, like Google, Microsoft, IBM, Netflix, and a lot of those companies I own stocks for. Now, will jQuery work in all browsers? The jQuery team knows about cross-browser issues, and they have written this knowledge into the jQuery library. jQuery will run exactly the same in all major browsers. Essentially, jQuery is JavaScript. It's a JavaScript library. So any browser that can run JavaScript can also run jQuery, which is why jQuery is so powerful and why so many people are using jQuery. Now, let's talk about how we can get started using jQuery. There are two main different ways to get started using jQuery on your website. The first is to download jQuery from, let's say, jQuery.com. Now, there's a lot of places you can download jQuery, but downloading from jQuery is probably the most popular. And the other way is you can include jQuery from a CDN like Google. Each has their benefit, and we're going to talk about those now. If I download jQuery, there are two versions of jQuery available for downloading. There's actually more, but there are two versions that are the most popular. We have the production version and the development version. The production version is for your live website because it has been minified and compressed. Every space that's in the file has been removed. Every variable that is a long string has been changed to a single character. Let's say I have a long string, now it's been changed to X and Y. Every tab has been removed. Every function name has been minified to X and Y. So everything has been compressed as small as possible. That way you can get the quickest loading times on the web. The smaller the library is, the quicker it will be to load. We also have the development version. The development version is for testing and development. It's uncompressed and readable. You can literally open it up, read all the functions, all the variables in the external JavaScript file in jQuery, and you can even modify those functions. You can customize the jQuery library, which is another reason it is so widely used. Whatever you're trying to do, you can try to use jQuery. If jQuery doesn't have that functionality, you can build on top of the library and integrate those needs into your site. Now, both versions can be downloaded from jQuery. Once you go to jQuery.com, we can select the minified version or the development version. Now, the jQuery library is essentially a single JavaScript file. It's an external JavaScript file, and you're going to reference that with the HTML script tag. If you look down here at this example below, look right here, you'll see I have the head section. And in the head section, I have a script with a source, and that's going to be linked to jQuery 3.3.1 min.js. So this is the minified version. That's going to be the production version. You'll notice here's a tip. You're going to place the downloaded file in the same directory as the pages where you wish to use it. That way I can simply put the file name here. A lot of times I'll see people have a JavaScript directory. That's okay. You put the JavaScript directory / then the file name. And we'll go over all of these in the coding example. Now, I said notice the script tag should be placed in the head section. Well, that's not necessarily true. Remember, with external JavaScript, I can place that in the head or in the body. But the order matters. So let's say I'm using Bootstrap, and Bootstrap's built on top of jQuery. It's important that the jQuery import comes first. So this is the jQuery import that I'm talking about. So when I link the jQuery library, it's important that it comes first and then the Bootstrap file because it's built on top of it. So jQuery must be loaded first. If I switch the order, if I load Bootstrap first, Bootstrap will throw a bunch of errors because it's built on top of jQuery and jQuery hasn't loaded yet. So a lot of times I'll see jQuery in the head section, which will help ensure that it's loaded first. However, if I put Bootstrap in the head section as well, the ordering matters again. So order matters when importing the jQuery library. Make sure if there's any other things that's built on top of jQuery that jQuery is imported first. Now, the other way is to use jQuery from a CDN. If you don't want to download and host jQuery yourself, you can include it from a content delivery network or a CDN. Both Google and Microsoft host jQuery. So let's say I want to use jQuery from Google or Microsoft. You can use the following. So look right here in the middle of the slide. I have the head section again. I have the external script file again, but in the source tag, instead of using my local machine's address, I'm going to use a URL to the Google API server. So here you'll see I'm using HTTPS. It's going to googleapis.com. I'm looking for jQuery 3.3.1, and that's going to be the minified version. So that's another thing that's sweet about jQuery. It's essentially an external JavaScript file. I can link that from my local machine. I can link that from a CDN. And no matter which way I do it, it's the same. I have a script tag with the source attribute, and the source will either point to my server or the Google server or whatever CDN you're using. Now, one big advantage to using jQuery hosted from Google or Microsoft is many users have already downloaded jQuery from Google or Microsoft when visiting other sites. As a result, it will be loaded from cache when they visit your site, which leads to faster loading times. So let's say I go to google.com. Google.com uses jQuery. Now I visit your website. Well, I've already loaded jQuery from google.com. The browser sees that I've already loaded it. It's going to load it from the cache, and it's going to load your page instantaneously, which will lead to really fast loading times. Also, most CDNs will make sure that once a user requests a file from it, it'll be served from the server closest to them, which also leads to faster loading times. Let's say I'm loading jQuery from a CDN, and jQuery is on Google servers in the US and in Australia. And a user from the US loads that CDN. Well, Google is going to see the users from the US, so it's not going to request it from Australia. It's going to request it from the United States, which will then lead to faster loading times because that server is much closer to the user. So there are also cons using a CDN. Let's say your site is old, you developed it 10 years ago, and you haven't updated your site at all. You're still using a very old jQuery library. Now, a lot of the old jQuery libraries are depreciated. So let's say that jQuery library was on Google, you link to a CDN, the jQuery library now becomes depreciated, and you have not updated your website. And Google decides to get rid of that link because it's depreciated and they assume nobody's using it anymore. Well, bad news for your site. Your site's linked to the Google CDN, and now it's no longer going to be able to reference that jQuery library, and then your page will not load, which is going to cause a lot of problems to the traffic that's coming to your site. However, let's say your site's old and you're using it on your local machine. Well, you've downloaded that jQuery library, you put it on your server. As long as the file does not become corrupt, and as long as you don't remove that file, no matter what, it's going to load each and every time. The only difference is each time it loads, it may load and have to read that entire file versus loading instantaneously from the cache. Now, more than likely, you're not going to be able to determine those differences. It's going to be a fraction of a second. So if the jQuery library needs to load, most likely it's going to be very quick. But that also depends on your internet speed, how many libraries you're loading, where's the user located, are they in a different country? If you factor in all these variables, a fraction of a second is important. So depending on your use case, a CDN may be better, or downloading the jQuery library and loading it from your local machine may be better. It just depends on what you're trying to do. We're going to get into the jQuery syntax. We're going to talk about selectors and how jQuery is going to speed up our development, and we're going to do that in the next video. Stick with Professor Wergeles.